Thank you so much, Stacy, our dynamic Joy Club leader. You know, we're in this amazing series that it's entitled 1 Month to Live. It's about 30 days per se of no regrets life. That's kind of what we want to get to. And we've been having a lot of fun with this. And I've gotten some really nice feedback from all of you thus far after last week's first lesson. And we're all about trying to clarify this one simple question. What if I only had 1 month left to live? If I had 30 days left on this earth, if I'm counting down those days, I mean, we'd be thinking about what would we be doing? Now, my guess is that we'd be finding ways to build bridges in our relationships, finding ways to bring about healing in our relationships, to enjoy those most important people in our lives, or perhaps spouses and children and family members and coworkers and neighbors and all these people that we interact with on a daily basis. And I don't think that anybody has to leave this earth with unfinished business. We don't have to leave that way. The way that we do want to leave is we want to leave this earth with our loved ones having experienced the summit of our relationships, and as a result, see our courage in loving. Because sometimes people aren't very lovable, are they? Sometimes people aren't very loving, are they? And yet it takes great courage on our part to love them regardless. And in order to love completely, you need to have the power that goes with that. Now, 1 Corinthians 13, that's the love chapter. And we read that and we use that in all of our weddings and things like that. But really, the lesson here today is to kind of design to say, okay, well, we read that, but what does it really look like? Because love is an action word. You know, one of the things that we learn is that love is an action and the feeling follows. Normally, we tend to think that love is this, this feeling that we have inside, like when we're eating chocolate and things of that nature, got this yummy feeling inside of our bodies, and that's really not what it is. Love is an action and the gushiness follows. Let me give you an example. You come home at night, your wife's not expecting it, and so this is a great thing for all of us guys this week, right? And so we go and we buy our wife's favorite flowers. And so we get these flowers, we go home and go, here, honey, we got you some flowers. And all of a sudden you get the gushy that comes, right? Because the action came first, the feelings come second. And I want to talk about those actions today, what they kind of manifest themselves, how they are supposed to look in the lives of others. And the principle of love is the area of perhaps greatest regrets in some people's lives, because in our relationships that we have, the one thing that we often don't really mix in like we should is the love. If you've ever watched that show, Everybody Loves Raymond, and that his mom really is always talking about how good her meals are and how good she cooks. And you know why her meals are so good? Because they're made with love. She constantly tells Raymond, it's love that I put into that. And so I want to talk about some of the principles, the most important of principles perhaps in our relationships, and the most important piece of this sermon series is dealing with love. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 18, it says, the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, here it is the power of God. Christ showed us the most powerful demonstration of love when he went to the cross. And I want you to think about that. When Jesus hung on the cross and demonstrates his love for us, he's manifesting three very specific things, okay? One, he's manifesting mercy, not giving us what we deserve. He's demonstrating grace, giving us what we haven't earned or deserved. And ultimately, the greatest power in the universe, forgiveness, choosing to remember our sins no more. That's what love on the cross looks like. And if we want to demonstrate love into the lives of other people, we're going to have to be able to do the same. Now remember, our goal here is always to live a life that's pleasing to God, right? And in order to be pleasing to God, we have to become more like Jesus. And the only way that we become more like Jesus is by learning and growing in that. So whether we have a business relationship, a partnership, a friendship, whether it's marriage, there are three mountains, I think, going into this. And I've kind of used some mountain climbing things to go along with it. I've never climbed a mountain. I've seen plenty of mountains, but I've never climbed one. But there are three mountains I believe that we have to climb if we're going to love people in our lives. And here's the first. The first one is the mountain of misunderstanding. Most relationships don't have the power to climb over this first summit because in relationships, those misunderstandings can begin to pile up pretty quick. And they can get as high as Pikes Peak. And like I say, I've been there. It's pretty high up, I'm going to tell you. In the beginning of a relationship, everything is so positive, right? Everything is perfect, right? You're climbing. It's a smooth trail that you're going together. You got each other beside one another. And it's that Sonny and Cher moment, babe, I've got you, babe, right? And everything's moving along. And then whammo, a boulder comes into the path. And now you've got a problem. It's a misunderstanding. And it's a misunderstanding that can throw both of you completely off course. And this situation can easily become a death zone for unity in a relationship. At first you think, this person that I'm relating to, they're great, they're just like me, but, it doesn't take long that, again, this mountain of misunderstanding hits, and you go, this guy's not like me at all. This woman is not like me at all. This person that I thought was a lot like me really isn't like me at all. In fact, they're very different from me. Now, we tend to think that opposites attract, and let me ask you this. How many of you married someone who's just like you? Not too many, right? So we usually, if we're marrying people that are not like us, then that means that we're probably going to be in for some misunderstandings, right? That's going to happen. Opposites definitely do attract, and I don't have to tell you that's the way it works. We all see that in our own lives, but the source of conflict doesn't come because we're opposite. It's because when the obstacle comes, we don't know how to deal with it. We don't know what to do with it. And so oftentimes we just kind of kick it to the side, right? You think about it. Is there a place in your house where you throw all your misunderstandings? Is there a closet that's holding all of your misunderstandings? Is there somewhere underneath the bed where you're shoving all the misunderstandings? Well, the fact of the matter is that you're not going to overcome them by shuffling them aside. We're going to have to learn how to deal with them, and that's where the love comes in. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that just yet because it would ruin the rest of the message. I got 7 other pages here. Let's get to it. I do know this, you can't read another person's mind, and even if you are a lot like someone else, you still aren't going to be able to read their mind, and we're all human, and so we're going to have some miscommunications, we're going to have some misinterpretations, and these things are going to be inevitable, and so this is a mountain we're going to have to learn how to climb. Let me tell you another mountain that we're going to have to climb if we're going to have a loving relationship, and it's the mountain of me first. It's very human nature to say, look, I'll meet your needs if you meet my needs. And preferably, you meet my needs first, and then we'll talk about your needs, right? I talked to a guy, and Jody and I, when we had our foster kids, and we had 9 kids in our van, 9 kids in the van. Now, have you ever heard the argument over preferential seating in a vehicle? And I get to sit there. No, I get to sit there. No, you sat there last time. I want to sit there. Mom, he sat there last time, and it's my turn. I called it. I get it, right? I got to tell you, I didn't want to take my family to too many places. Because that's just not a lot of fun, But Jody had a really good plan. Jody came up with this plan where they had to take turns. She had a seating thing, and each kid, she knew who sat where the last time, and so she knew who was going to sit where the next time. So she's just a lot smarter and more organized than me. I just figure leave them home to fend for themselves. Or let them fight it out, and see who wants it the most, right? Who really wants to sit in that second seat? And I guess it's just nature. natural for all of us to kind of have that me first attitude. Me, I want, I need, I feel, right? We all want the good seat in life. But it does create a huge mountain, a huge obstacle that many relationships have a very difficult time overcoming. When you're in a relationship with another individual that is always concerned about their own needs and not the needs of others, that's going to be difficult. But there's a third peak. If those two weren't enough, there's a third peak in this rocky range, and I think it's the most deadly of the three. It is the mountain of mistakes. And we all make mistakes, every single one of us. Just as we have misunderstandings, just as we have sometimes a selfish desire to put ourselves first, we all also have some faults that we have to deal with. And we all mess up. I mean, I don't do the dishes right every time. I don't do the clothes right every time. I don't mow the yard right every time. I don't write the sermon right every time. I don't do everything right every time. And truth be told, the things that you do, you don't do them right every time also. Every one of us finds ourselves in that situation. And sometimes the mistake that we make hurts somebody in our life. It hurts somebody in our relationship. And it's so easy when you're hurt in a relationship that it's not the mistake, it is the wall or the mountain that you begin to put up because of that mistake. It is the mountain of bitterness. It is the mountain of resentment. And you surround your heart with this. You begin to protect yourself because you don't want to be hurt again. But when you build this mountain of bitterness, no relationship is going to be able to overcome that. And I'll tell you why. Because, I believe that relationships can overcome anger. Anger usually doesn't kill a relationship. I mean, the Bible actually teaches that sometimes it's healthy to be angry. It says, be angry, but do not sin. So there's a righteous sense of anger that we can have, but we have to deal with it, and we can deal with it biblically. But whenever we become bitter and embittered, and we hold on to a hurt, and you build that mountain of bitterness around, that is absolutely a relationship killer. Because it not only hurts the person that you've built that mountain against, but it hurts you as well. And a relationship's not going to be able to overcome that apart from love. And so these three mountains shape the landscape of, I think, most relationships. And we can be intimidated by the ascent. We can, just kind of viewing the challenge, and you look at it and you go, man, that's pretty insurmountable, man. I don't know if I can overcome that. And we say, well, I just quit. I give up. And we walk out on the relationship. None of us truly wants to quit. And I just want to say this. If we only had 1 month to live, none of us would quit on those relationships. Nothing would be more clear that we would want to make sure that we went to our grave having overcome those challenges and difficulties. To really love the people that are in our lives, we're going to have to learn how to overcome some of these mountainscapes. We're going to have to grow in our willingness to pour ourselves into the people that we love and motivate them to stay on the trail and help empower them to persevere as we are. Remember, we love with like a reciprocal love. You know what that means? It means that we love somebody in such a way that they want to love us back. In the book of Ephesians, Paul admonishes husband, love your wife the way that Christ loved the church. And he goes on that he might present it without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, yada, yada, yada. But he also says, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. What he's saying here, if I could paraphrase that, is husband, love your wife in such a way that she will want to reciprocate that love back to you. And when that happens, submission is there. It's not easy. And I'll tell you this, relationships are not for wimps. It's going to take supernatural help if you're going to get through this life with healthy relationships. We're going to need the power of God's love in order to overcome these mountains. But I just want you to know the supply is limitless. And the price of the resource that God offers to us never goes up because it's been paid for once and for all at the cross of Christ. So I'm going to encourage you to drink freely from that fountain, never worrying that you're taking too much or that there won't be any for tomorrow. It'll be there, trust me. Now, the Bible reveals to us strategies for keeping relational mountains small and keeping them manageable. And so I want to share basically 3 of them with you, okay? The first one I'm going to call the rope of acceptance. In order to preserve and to improve our relationships, we have to connect with this rope. And rock climbers use a technique with ropes. It's called belaying. And you can see kind of there in the picture of that rope and the way that it's wrapped around them. It secures the climber to the rope so that they don't fall too far in case they slip. Similarly, you can't climb to new heights safely if you don't connect with a rope of acceptance. And I want to share with you what the Romans says in Romans chapter 15. He says, accept one another, then just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. To accept others means that I stop trying to change them and I just simply accept them. If I have to try to understand some of the people that are in my life, it's going to be very hard to love them. To really love them and to climb over the mountain of misunderstanding, I just need the power of God's love to accept them and then to build into them. Climb new heights, we need that rope of acceptance, and I want to give you what my definition of acceptance is because I don't want you going to the wrong place per se. Acceptance just simply means this. I'm not going to try to change you. I'm just going to begin to cherish you for who you are. I may not get or like everything about who you are, but I'm simply going to cherish you as the person you are. And you haven't really accepted someone if you're trying to constantly change them. I see this all the time in pre-marriage counseling. You got a guy and a gal, and they come together and they want to get married. One of them is a Christian, the other one is not a Christian, and you try to teach them about the idea of being unequally yoked and the mess that really can cause. And I've heard more than one young ladies say the same thing again and again. But I love him, and I can change him. I've got news. No, you can't, and no, you won't. We must embrace people and see them for who they are. If our goal is to change them, we're not going to have much of a relationship with them. Because we realize that it's our differences that really will make life so much more fun and more exciting, I think. I like the word cherish, though, and used in this type of a context. I think that every woman, and I can't speak as a woman, so forgive me, but I think that every woman wants to be cherished and treasured. I think down in the recesses that they really embrace that and want that. I think that every kid wants to be cherished and treasured by their parent. They don't want to be made out to be something that they're not or that they weren't created for. No kid wants to feel like they have to live out the fantasy of their father or their mother. They just want to be them. So the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should grow. So as they get older, they'll not depart from. That simply means that every child is created differently. And you have to see the uniqueness of how that child is made and cherish who they are and help train them in the love of the Lord and let them grow naturally. Guys, I got to tell you, the good news is that in order for us to cherish our wives, we really don't have to totally understand her and everything. That's a big relief, isn't it? We don't have to do that. I think sometimes when we try to understand each other, you just get this look like, huh? What? Bill Cosby said that. He said, all men have this look, the fathers, they have a look on their face like, what? is sometimes we just don't get it. We don't necessarily have to get it. We just have to accept it and accept them for who they are and the difference. We don't always have to understand our mates. We just have to try to get into the game together and just to connect with one another. That's what acceptance is in any relationship. Think about back in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 25 says, the man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. It doesn't say here they were both naked and unashamed because they've been working out a whole lot and they're fit and they're buff and they're proud of their bodies. That's not what it's saying. It's not what it means at all. It was because they felt that the deepest human longing to be accepted by one another. They were experiencing what every one of us wants to experience in life, to be totally accepted by other people. And that's a huge mountain for us to overcome. Do we like everything about everyone? Of course we don't. But that's not the issue. Can we love them despite the fact that we don't always like those things? To be totally accepted, we have to let our guard down. In wanting acceptance, usually we try to hide our faults, don't we? I don't want them to know I don't have it all together. What's natural is for us to try to hide it. What's supernatural is to allow Christ to move our heart in such a way that we can embrace people for who they are. A second thing I think we need to do is to gain traction with loving actions. A little play on words. Nothing's more important to climbers than the traction of their boots, right? You can have all the other equipment, but if you're not sure-footed, splat. Sooner or later, right? The essentials for strong relationships are those small, little, loving actions. All the seemingly little, insignificant things that mean so much to someone else. I can share something that I do for Jody that I know that she loves. I always have the coffee pot ready to go for her in the morning. So all she has to do is come out of the bedroom and she's like, push the button. And go sit down. She doesn't have to worry about carrying the water, getting the filter, or any of that stuff. Just something small, something little, right? Nothing's more important. I'm going to tell you, when we think about these loving actions, I'll give you 3 little C's here that give good traction in love. Things that really help make that love stick. And the first one is consideration. We find it in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 4. It says, and look out for one another's interests, not just your own. That means that we're looking to meet the needs of the people that are around us, even before we look to meet the needs of ourselves. I see this kind of thing happening in neighbors and neighborhoods all the time. And that, one day I went over to Mom's to do the yard, and the guy across the street had already come over and done the leaves for my mom. And I went, woo, that was pretty good. I'm going home. Something little, right? And yesterday I was in so much pain. Oh my goodness, my shoulder hurt so bad, my finger hurt so bad. But my mom's neighbor that lives next to her, they're such sweet people and stuff. And I know they've done things. And he's out there, and he's got a pile of leaves this thick because they're on vacation and that. And he was over and he blew all the stuff out of his flower bed. And my dad's got one of these chippers, so he's going to have to rake it all up and everything. So I just went over with Dad's chipper and sucked them all up. And he was like, "All right, I'm going to go watch the game." It's just a little thing. It wasn't anything big or major. It was just something little. And sometimes those little things mean so much to other people. Relationships work best when each person in the relationship, they not only say that I love you, but they do those little things that demonstrate a love for one another. And when we look at each other, and I think about the way that Christ loved us, that there's nothing that we could possibly do. You know that? There's nothing we could do to make Jesus love us more than he already does. And there's nothing that we could do to make him love us less than he does. He just infinitely loves us, and we go about life that way. Think about how much peace we have with those around us when we look at them the same way. There's nothing they could do to make us love them more. And there's nothing they could do to make us love them less. Here's the second C. It's cooperation. Great teams have good chemistry. I'll tell you why the Buckeyes ended up rolling it up on Penn State yesterday. It's because they have good team chemistry. And their chemistry is better than Penn State's chemistry. Quite frankly, I think their chemistry is better than any other team's chemistry. But that's just my opinion. It's not just about the fact that you've got a good quarterback, or you got a good running back, or a decent offensive line, or that you have a good defense and a good linebacker. It's the idea that they can all work together harmoniously in a sense of synergy and teamwork, and we call that cooperation. We call that chemistry. In John chapter 13 and verse 1, it says, it was just before the Passover feast, and Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world to go to the Father, and having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. And let me tell you what he did. He showed them how to have chemistry. He got down on his knees and he washed their feet, and then he said, go and do likewise. That is the chemistry. That's what makes it great. He showed them his love by serving them, something that a servant would do, and he taught them, of course, to serve one another. But there are so many people that instead of serving one another and cooperating together, they're always in competition with one another, even in our deepest relationships, always competing. And the Bible says that when two people are joined together, per se, in marriage, they become one. We've got to get rid of the idea of equity and equality in our relationships because they're both bad. God's not interested in equity, and he's not interested in equality. He's interested in unity. He's interested in oneness. He's interested in our ability to come alongside another one in their time of disparity and bring them to the place where they need to be. And like verse, right? When we realize that we are one, then we work together. And that kind of works well. Let's throw that into Mom's neighborhood there. We're kind of like one. Cleaning each other's leaves and things like that. By the way, it's your turn. Just kidding. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Really, it's your turn. No. Here's the third C. When we talk about relationships, we say, what makes a relationship work? Oh, love. That's not true. It is commitment to love. Commitment. Love isn't love without the traction of commitment. And making a sense of commitment to those relationships, to those people that are around you. A relationship, husbands to wife, yes. A relationship, parents to children. Children must make a commitment to their parents as well. A commitment between teachers and students, students and teachers. A commitment between employers and employees, neighbors and neighbors. We make a commitment to one another. All those little things that we do over time that build up and make all the difference. That's what makes a great relationship. And the truth of the matter is, it's not natural for us to want to meet the needs of other people above ourselves. It's natural that we really want to be selfish. It's supernatural that we want to put the needs of others before ourselves. And that's what makes the church a special place. In Philippians 2:13, he says, God is working in you, giving you the desire to obey him and the power to do what pleases him. And you should really think about that passage. There's two words that I would really amplify and underline, the word desire and the word power. Because God wants to give each one of us a supernatural desire to meet the needs of others that are around us. And then on top of that, he wants to give us the power to do it. That's kind of like, your dad saying, that girl, she's kind of a nice kid. Why don't you take her to the movies? Here's $20. Go take her to the movies. Not only is he giving you a sense of desire, but then giving you the ability to be able to do it. And God's saying, look at these people that are around you. He said, the field is white for the harvest. Well, you can't win them to Jesus if you don't love them. If we don't show compassion and all the things that we've already been talking about, and then he gives us the power to do it. The clarity and the security that our loving actions bring to the people around absolutely can't be underestimated. And they're going to provide great traction for us to get up that summit. And then we move to the third thing. The third thing to overcoming obstacles of loving the people in our lives is very simply this. We must be, and you knew I was going to go here, you have to be tethered by forgiveness. You knew I was coming back to this again and again and again. Every climber knows the importance of being tethered to the rock in order to keep from falling. I mean, you can have a rope around your waist all you want, but it better be tied off to the rock or guess what? Splat. And in our relationships, tethering is forgiving. In Colossians 3:13, he says, get along with each other, forgive each other. If someone does wrong to you, forgive that person because the Lord forgave you. We get the power to forgive people in our lives who hurt us simply by looking at the cross. Because we're never going to have to forgive anybody in our life or in our circle more than Christ has forgiven us. To understand what real love is, you got to look to the cross. In fact, the picture of love is found on that cross. I said it in 1 John 3:16. He said, this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for one another. In other words, I said he demonstrated mercy and grace and forgiveness. And if we're going to have this kind of amazing love, we have to do the same thing. Christ shows us the power of love, and he showed us what it looks like when he took it to the cross. And then he tells us that we're to love other people just like that, to lay down our lives, to lay down that sense of selfishness that we can have, lay down our own natural wants and desires and needs, and to put other people first. Serving others. And when I look around at the church, and I hope you don't mind me bragging on you, Whipple, but when I look around this church, every day I see that power evident in this place. You have no idea how proud I am of who you are. You are an amazing people, and you don't even know it. Some possible acts of kindness and things that I think we can be demonstrating to others that we've seen here in this church is unbelievable. The prayer that we pour out for and to one another, the phone calls, the visits, the cards, the meals. Yeah, the meals. Did I mention the meals? Yeah. Think about some of the things that maybe we'll be able to do for our community. I mean, just think about the infinite possibilities that we could have. You got one really coming up with Halloween trick or treat. Yes, I admit it. I hate it. I don't like trick or treat. I think it's out of the pit. I think it's of the devil. I don't like it. I do not like it. Yes. I don't like it. But I'm not going to go in the house and hide from it. We may not give out candy and things and stuff like that, but what prevents us from standing outside and making sure that kids are getting across the street properly, making sure that there's no traffic jams, watching? We still love children, don't we? We may not be involved with handing out candy, but that doesn't mean we still can't demonstrate God's love in a practical way. When we go to Walmart, can't we demonstrate God's love in a practical way by saying, I'll take that cart. I'm going that way. Maybe we could demonstrate Christ's love in a practical way just by simply putting our own carts away and not leaving them lay all over the place. There's lots of ways that we can demonstrate God's love. Taking a cup of coffee to somebody, right? Maybe volunteering at a blood drive, volunteering at the polling thing, or whatever it is. Finding ways that we can do random acts of kindness that show a sense of graciousness and love to others. Maybe you got a neighbor that's got something going on and you can get next door and help fix it. Maybe you can't fix it yourself, but maybe you and someone else can fix it and you do it together. Random acts of love. I know that it will really impact a community when you see what God's love looks like practically. You know, one of my favorite Peanuts cartoons. I love the Peanuts. That's one of the things I like about Christmas coming up, because I'll get to see Charlie Brown Christmas. It's one of my favorites. I like that show. And the Grinch. Yeah, I like the Grinch because I am the Grinch in many ways. But in one of my favorite Peanuts cartoons, Linus sitting there watching TV. All of a sudden, Lucy comes into the room and turns the channel. And he says to her, he goes, well, what makes you think that you could just come in here and turn the channel? Why would you do such a thing? She says, well, I'll give you 5 good reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when these 5 little fingers come together, they become a pretty strong community. And he looked at her and he says, what channel do you want? And then he looked at his hand and goes, why can't you guys get together like that? I think that's how the church is supposed to be. By ourselves, oftentimes we feel like, you can't always get the things done that you need to get done, because this world's a big world, right? We're so small, we're so insignificant as individuals, but the reality is that when we come together as a church, we change the world. And I challenge you to look for ways to love your world completely. Not just inside of your family, inside of your marriage, but inside of your neighborhood, your community. But I'll tell you, to do that, you're going to need the power of the cross, because it was there that Christ demonstrated his power and his love for you. I hope you've received that love today. If you don't know the love and the power of Christ, today is your day of salvation. Today is your day of hope. Today is your day where you can surrender yourself to the power of the cross and say, I get it. I see how, Father, you demonstrated your love towards me, and that your Son, the Lord Jesus, while I was in my sin, you sent him to the cross on my behalf. I get that. And I want to love like that. Let him come into your heart today. Surrender your love and your mercy and your grace and your forgiveness to him. Be born again. Be regenerated. Let him take that heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, so that you can love like he loved and live like he lived. Father, as we come humbly before you today, you've shown us that if nothing else in this life, there are mountains to climb. Some of those mountains are our own doing. Some of them are not. But in each of them, Father, you've also shown us how to stay connected to you. And you can help us to embrace and to accept other people. Show us how we can offer loving actions that will really help gain traction in this journey through life together. And let our hearts always, always be tethered by forgiveness, quick to love others even when they don't show love to us. Father, I lift up those in the congregation today that are struggling in these areas of their life. And I pray that you would give them all the power that they need and help them to know it, to feel it, to experience it, and to demonstrate it. Give them the courage and the boldness to live life different by loving people completely. I thank you so much, Father, and ask your richest blessings upon us. And all of his people said, amen.